Welcome back to the Wrong Kind of Music Podcast. It has been way too fucking long. Everyone knows why, and the events of the last 18 months I just don't want to talk about. We're going to focus on music coming back to Belfast, live music coming back, heavy metal coming back, punk and hardcore coming back to Belfast. I'm joined today by Phil. How's it going, Phil?
Not bad.
Happy days. Not too hungover?
Yeah, I mean 1:45, but you know we'll soldier on. You have to.
Happy days. Yeah. So as I say, I don't want to dwell on COVID. Everyone's talked about it. It's just been covered 100 times. What can we say that hasn't already been said? But one thing I want to touch on is some of the things that happened towards the end of it as things came back to life in terms of the live music scene. And one of the first big things for us was Bloodstock Festival. Phil, first Bloodstock, wasn't it?
First Bloodstock, and must say, really I loved it. I mean, I've been to other festivals, you know, Download, Rock and Park, and various others, and Sonosphere and things, but just the size of that just feels right.
Yeah,
It's the 100,000 people festivals. It's madness. It's chaos. Where Bloodstock, nice, chilled, relaxed. If I want to go back to the tent, I can. Yeah. It's not a 2-day camel ride, you know.
The great thing about Bloodstock is like just the amount of people we know that go to it.
Yeah. And that's it.
We always pick our festivals based on the lineup, so we end up in Germany or France or whatever just because there's bands we want to see. But when you go to Bloodstock, it almost doesn't matter what the lineup is.
Yeah, I mean, you can see there's always going to be something on that bill that's going to interest you. Yeah. It doesn't matter. They do stack their lineup quite a lot, and because they're not on that European touring schedule, you get the same Download headliner that you get in Graspop and all those various other ones, you know, because they're all in around the same time in June, where Bloodstock have a bit of a carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want, you know, and it's great to, you know, that they can do that. And what actually was interesting for me about Bloodstock this year was just the way they had to do it, because they couldn't get touring bands in. They couldn't get the big American bands over. So it ended up actually being a best of, you know, Great Britain and Ireland mostly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, all the bands just, and it seemed like there was a bit of a community spirit about that. It was pretty good.
I don't think it suffered for it.
No, it didn't at all.
I think if they said one year we're only going to book, like everything aside from what's happened recently, if we're only going to book UK bands, I'd be thinking that narrows it down, and that's going to make it difficult to put a really good lineup. Nah, that wasn't the case. Like, some of the bands were just outstanding. Svalbard, Raging Speedhorn, our own guys that we'll probably talk about in a wee bit. But what would say, I didn't ask you this prior to the podcast, but I'll put you on the spot. What would be your three highlights of
I think for me, actually, one of the biggest, and again we will talk about it later, but one of the biggest highlights of that festival was actually seeing the crawling on that size stage, and
that was good then, was it?
Killing it. Yeah. Yeah, so like, just even with the pyro and all that kind of stuff, the that was brilliant. And you know, to see somebody that, I suppose, in a roundabout way we've had kicking about the scene for a long time just go out there and absolutely, you know, slaughter the place was fantastic.
Yeah.
Then I think, sort of, you know, on the other side of that, Malevolence was, you know, first time I've ever seen them. I'm a recent convert, and I've very much enjoyed that. And I'm going to actually go in and say I really enjoyed the Evil Scarecrow as well.
Serious? Yeah.
So that's probably the three, but like, you know, I really enjoyed that. Thought they were
the crawling for me. I overindulged in a few beverages, and I don't remember seeing the crawling. I was there. I was front and centre on the barrier. Don't remember a moment of it, despite it being pyro and everything. And as you say, I mean, I've seen the photos and stuff, and it looked incredible. And that's a band that we have seen going from playing 30, 40, 50 people in the limelight to playing in front of, I mean, I can't say it was packed because I don't remember, but I'm assuming there was a damn good crowd there in the Sophie stage.
The tent, there was no room in the tent.
Mm-hmm.
There was no room left in that tent at all, and spilling out the sides, really. I'm really hoping that there's some live footage of that somewhere kicking about, because I'd quite like to see some of that again.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that comes.
Another highlight you touched on there was Malevolence. I mean, to me, we wouldn't have been there if Malevolence hadn't been playing. It was when they were added to the bill, we were like, right, we are going to make this happen one way or another.
And I think the way that it worked was because, again, it was British. It was the best of English bands. The only reason they were there was because Simon Hall had nobody left, and it was like, I'll have to get a hardcore band in, which I think he doesn't normally do.
No, there's always been a slight lack of hardcore bands at Bloodstock. They've booked the likes of Biohazard and stuff like that are kind of, they've got a hardcore background, but they've kind of drifted into the world of metal and whatnot. Yeah. But like, number one highlight for me was Malevolence. Second one would have been Borstal, another hardcore band that I think played at 11 in the morning or something.
Yeah. We I think it was 10:45 we had to be there for. And it
literally woke up still drunk, smacked some drinks in days, and went down and had a dance to Borstal.
And the first ever gig as well, you know.
And then my third highlight of Bloodstock wasn't even a band, it wasn't a person, it was Bunny Chow. It was the food, the Bunny Chow. Just to explain what it was. I know people don't come onto this podcast and listen to us talk about grub, but it was like a bap, big soft bap, emptied out, filled with chili, and then the bits they emptied out, they made like garlic bread with it. Oh, and it was amazing. I think we had it like 3 times over the course of the weekend. Twice at least. But
no, like I definitely had it more than that. I think I had it twice in one day. Like I think I had it for breakfast and then went back and had nachos.
Yeah. But Bloodstock was absolutely great, and it was incredible going from, like, I always imagined that coming back to live music, it would have been like a gradual thing, like a few shitty seated gigs followed by some other small, maybe outdoor gigs with limitations put on. But we didn't. We went from nothing to 18,000 people on a field, going nuts for a weekend, to some of the best UK bands about. Something else.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah. It was certainly a shock to the system, and you know, it was just for a brief moment you forgot about everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it was great, you know. So, but yeah, it was good to get back and do something on that level.
So after that, let's focus on the Belfast scene. Gigs. Yeah. There was that wee period that I just talked about of seated gigs. Thankfully it came and went and we're allowed to do much more than that. Did you go to any seated gigs?
The only one I went to was Host,
and they are
a Ghost tribute band from Ireland who I gotta say I really enjoyed it.
Good night.
Yeah, I went with fairly low expectations because I think the last time that I'd actually seen them was after the Ghost gig in Dublin in, what was that, November 2019.
Yeah.
So I went down and it was in Fibber's basement, and Fibber's basement just compact.
I was there that night, and I nipped in, took a few photos and because it was so rammed.
It was so rammed, and I just sort of said to myself, I can't deal with this, I'm away. And that was the last time. So I did, again, no expectations, and went in and I had a thoroughly enjoyable evening. You know, the guys, I think, you know, that are in that band, they are very aware that, you know, it's a bit of fun, and like they pulled it off, you know, right down to the whole dress, everything was great, and then, you know, what without a plastic saxophone, you know, just because it's a bit of crack, it's a bit of fun, and I really enjoyed it, but it was fully seated, and, you know, did it make it any worse for it? It actually really didn't.
I was going to say, I mean, there's two sides to it, because I've always thought of Ghost. It took me a while to come around to Ghost. Talked about it before in the past, but there's some of their tunes that, like, you can really dance to, like Rats or Square Hammer and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's a real sense of cabaret about Ghost. And I think in that sense, a seated gig might kind of work, you know?
I totally agree with you there. I mean, I have actually been to an actual Ghost gig that was seated in the London Palladium. So the London Palladium actually just has seats around the place, and everybody was sat, and it was like a sort of a matinee type, you know, type thing at the very start. But, you know, 2 songs in, it's a free-for-all. The thing I remember, the enduring memory of the London Palladium is a £5 can of Red Stripe, which, you know, weighs a bit heavy on the mind, that one.
We'll not talk about Red Stripe. I've had some fucking horrific nights on that stuff. Yeah, so seated gigs, the only one that I went to was a punk gig in Voodoo, and it was Pizza Tramp, Tickers and Users, The Skunts, and it escapes me right now who the fourth band was. I wouldn't have went because I was really opposed. I didn't want to come back to live music in a staged fashion where it's, you know, we can come back but we all have to sit and behave ourselves, especially a punk gig. But it was my birthday.
Yeah.
And there was bands on that I liked playing, and I wasn't going to sit in a hole at home doing, you know, watching fucking Netflix or whatever whenever Takers and Users are playing down. So we went down, and the rules weren't 100% abided, you know.
No, I can't see it.
It wasn't hectic. It's not like tables were all pushed aside and everyone just went for it. I mean, like myself, it was kind of during Takers and Users, it was kind of like sit down, and then the chorus maybe stand up and have a bit of a sing and then sit back down again before Robbie comes over and tells you off, you know. There was a couple of wee people drifting up towards the front, and I think at the very end of the night,
yeah,
a bunch of us might have pushed forward. But for the most part, people are here to the gigs, and it was a really good night. But at the same time, yeah, just you wouldn't if it kept going on like that. If they had held on to this idea that seated gigs were somehow feasible and safe, or any more safe than regular gigs, I think I would have lost interest and just not really attended. One was fine, especially for my birthday, but that was enough. The fourth band in that bill, by the way, was Rant. There was a lot of drink consumed that night because it was my birthday. But moving on anyway, I should have said this at the start of the podcast. We are literally just talking about all the gigs that have happened between things opening up and now. So it's what the podcast's always been about. Just talking about the live music scene. You know, we touch and we dabble on gig reviews, or not gig reviews, like album reviews, and we've even done a few interviews and stuff like that. But the crux of the podcast has always been talking about live gigs and live music scene. It's basically taken that conversation that we would have between bands,
yeah,
in Voodoo or in the Limelight, and turn it into a podcast format. So the first actual gig back where you could take your mask off, mosh if you wanted to, no restrictions, just straight in there, back to the way it used to be. That first gig was Strangle Wire, Words That Burn, and Wardamized, and it seemed very short notice announced.
Yeah, it was only what, it's like if you got a week or 10 days, like it was.
And I think it was Strangle Wire that put it on, wasn't it? It was a Grindstone Records night.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. What do you think of the lineup? What do you think of the lineup?
Bit of an. It's not necessarily bands I would put together.
Yeah.
You know, on the same bill. You know, I don't think it suffered at all. I mean, I think people were glad to be back, and to get to a gig. So, you know, don't think it was maybe the maybe it was just who's available and who could do it. But certainly it was a bit of an eclectic sort of lineup. But again, I had a very good night, a really good night. I don't believe the turnout was great.
It wasn't. I was surprised.
Yeah.
I was really surprised that there wasn't more people there. I thought it would have been, you know, everyone talks the talk, like when gigs come back we'll all be out, and
we're gonna go to all of them, you know.
Not so much that night.
Yeah.
But Wardamized kicked things off. Thought they were a little shaky, if I'm honest. Technical problems, but that can happen to the best of bands. I think Eddie couldn't hear himself play because I noticed he was right up with Dean the whole night, like locked in with the drums. Musically, there's bits of their stuff I like, there's bits of the stuff I'm not overly keen on. I've seen them play better. I've definitely seen them play better. But that being said, it's been a long time since a lot of these bands have played. A lot of bands are going to come back, as I say, just a wee bit shaky. So wouldn't be deterred from going to see them again. But I think, especially with the style of music they play, and I know that they've said they're not focused on the grindcore as such anymore. They're kind of stretching out beyond that. But I think the bands they played with just have a more sort of locked in stage show, and I think they'd be better suited playing with bands similar to themselves. I think they'd be better suited on punk shows and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with you there. You know, just the style of music that Word of Mouth play is not something that I would really listen to. So again, I just don't think that I can appreciate what they do because, you know, I suppose being and doing this, I do follow probably every band, you know, I do in the scene, you know, and see what they're doing. And I mean, you know, obviously following Word of Mouth for years, you know, you see these guys and they're going to France, they're going, you know, around Europe and playing gigs and getting, you know, reasonable plaudit for doing so. You know, but it's not for me. That style of music wasn't, you know, overly enamored with just, you know, the show. But again, if I'm not enjoying the music, it's kind of hard to look past that.
I get you.
You know,
yeah.
So you know, but again, there were technical difficulties, but like, it's coming back. You know, it is what it is.
Absolutely. I mean, the aspects of Word of Mouth that I do like Ali seems to have like two styles of vocals. So he'll use the high up stuff and then the growlier stuff. I mean, the growlier stuff I really like. That high up stuff, it's just, I mean, there's no music I listen to that has vocals like that.
Yeah.
Not a fan of death metal. Not a fan of grind that uses those kind of vocals, so that's kind of one of the reasons that I'm just a wee bit not overly fussed in this. However, there was one point during one of the songs, I think it's one of the new songs, and he almost started rapping. It sounded like, if you listen to These Nuts, there was a bit that sounded like These Nuts, and just that wee bit of it, I was like, fuck me, if they do more stuff like this, I'm all over this. This would be great crack. Loving that. And then Dean's, I love watching Dean drum, you know, so there's always positive aspects in that. No,
I do think, you know, like there's these guys are out there and you can see that they love it. You know, you can see that passion. You can see what you know, they are playing 100%. You know, they are giving it everything. Like they just, and that's I like that about them a lot. You know, you know, they're going out there, and it's the attitude of it actually is like is nice. It's good attitude, you know. It's like they come out and it's just like, you're at my fucking show, and I'm playing for you, you know.
Yeah.
And so no, it was what it was, and I have seen Word of Mouth 5 or 6 times. I think the last time previous was in McHugh's, and I think you're right, it wasn't their best.
Well, funny enough, we were talking about McHugh's earlier, and I can't think of a single good gig that I've been to in McHugh's. It's just a venue I don't get on with. Don't like it.
No,
don't enjoy gigs there.
It's very cramped. It's very small, and I just I think, you know, you almost are on the stage. It is reasonably hard to. It's a very loud place as well. I suppose, you know, if you've no ear protection there, it's definitely going to hurt you.
Words That Burn played.
Yeah.
I don't have much to say about Words That Burn because they do what Words That Burn do. They come on, they play that sort of, I wouldn't say it's strictly metalcore, but it's definitely in that ballpark. And they're just very, very good, very professional. Only disappointment was that they've recently taken on another guitarist, and it is, I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the guy that does a lot of music videos for bands down there. Yeah, Angel. Did you say?
Yeah. It's I think Angel.
He runs Cosmopolis, who's done videos for the likes of Neon Empire and stuff. He's a brilliant videographer. His stuff's really, really good. And then having followed him off the back of that, I've seen him play like just noodling on guitar and stuff on Instagram, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Words That Burn as a 5-piece.
Absolutely. I was a wee bit disappointed myself. I did ask, you know, up front, are we getting the 5? You know, but I think he was actually on, you know, video shooting duty or something at that point. But it was, I do like Words That Burn quite a lot. I loved that the last album, Pyres. You know, they've released a couple of wee snippets, you know, Den of Wolves and various other new songs that have come out recently. Played Bloodstock as well there. You know, they've definitely they've put a bit of work in. You know, that wasn't their first show back, so actually we got a pretty good show out of them as well.
Damn good show.
Yeah. So, and it is you're right in what you say. Like they are professionals. You know, everything's spot on.
Yeah, even if you hadn't, I've listened to interviews with them and stuff, and kind of wouldn't say all the guys particularly well, but know of them. You could just tell when you watch them on stage, they look like a band that have aspirations to be doing more than what they're doing.
Yeah,
and that is just clear from their performance. Strangle Wire finished the night, and like I've never seen Strangle Wire put on a bad show. They are just potentially the best death metal band in Belfast in terms of like. There's other bands that it might spring to mind when I say that, but in terms of just straight death metal, I think they might be one of the best. I've always went to see them with an attitude of, I don't listen to that kind of music, but these guys are amazing live. But then over the last year or so, I have been listening to the album, so I've got to know songs like, Failure Exhibit.
Yeah.
Is that the name of the song? I think I might have just embarrassed myself. But now that I know the songs, it makes the live shows even better. Pete is just an incredibly intense frontman.
Yeah. This constant gaze that he has, that constant gaze that sort of looks, it feels at every moment of that gig, you feel that he's looking at you.
Yes,
specifically,
just eyeball the fuck.
Yeah,
and then there's the wee thing he always does with the, he points into the crowd as failure, and I fucking love that every time. And whenever I'm shooting the show, I'm always waiting for that bit, and then he does it, and it's like, fuck, I must every time.
And it is. That's one of my favorite parts of that whole, like, their set. It's just that bit. I just love it. I wait for it every time. And again, they're coming off the back of a really successful gig at Bloodstock again.
Yep.
Those guys. So and it's those guys again. We talk about professionalism, and they do it. They deliver. There's no chance you're going to a Strangle Wire show and it's going to be bad. It's just no chance. It's not happening.
Absolutely. And it's not. I mean, we kind of focus on Pete being a great frontman. It's not just Pete.
No, 100%.
Drummer, guitarist, bass player. They're all superb, and they all just lock in and deliver those songs really, really good. Moving on then. There was a night on a Thursday night of all nights, and I thought this night was going to be a bit of a shit show because up in the Speakeasy, we had Worn Out up from Cork, we had Farm Wolf filling in for Oracle, and we had Survivalist playing. On the same night in Voodoo, we had Crypt of the Rift, which is an ongoing set of gigs run by the guys in Elder Druid. And on that night was Elder Druid themselves. I can't remember.
Elder Druid, I think.
7.5 tons of beard, Slowmatics.
Yeah.
Hornets. And Embrace Execution.
That's the ones, yeah.
See, don't even have that written down. Actually do. Could have just looked at that. Anyway, so the decision was made that we were going to go to the Speakeasy, and if there was time, we would head down to Voodoo afterwards and catch what we could. So we went to the Speakeasy. First and foremost, first time in the Speakeasy. Nice wee venue.
I loved it. I actually went. You know what? This is nice. It's cozy. It kind of feels about the right size for some of the gigs that we know are getting put on in the city. So it wasn't too busy. It wasn't too sparse, and you still have that area away from the stage that you're not constantly in the gig, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
So I was impressed with the Speakeasy. I'd like to see more there.
Whenever I first walked into the place, I seen the amount of seats, and I've seen this before, and I thought to myself, there's too many people sitting down when the bands play. It takes a lot to get people off their ass.
Yeah.
And I just thought everyone was sat there. But the minute Survivalists took to the stage, everyone was up and moved forward.
Yeah.
I think on that night, everyone was really, really supportive of the bands, which is, fucking brilliant to see. It's what you want to see. You don't want people standing down the back chatting away. Although it's kind of what I've done during Farm Wolf's set, if I'm completely honest. Beer prices as well. Fucking superb. What was it, $3.20 a pint or something?
Don't know. I wasn't drinking that particular night, which is very unlike me. But
it was mad cheap, obviously because it's a student bar.
Yeah.
But yeah, cracking. My only thing would be it was a nightmare for anyone trying to shoot photographs. But all they need, I say, if they just had two little spotlights on that stage, because the stage is really, really small. It'd sort it. That's all that place needs.
Seems to be a couple of big stacks on either side that just kind of close the stage off a wee bit. It seems like it's really enclosed, and I think there's certain at times, even for, you know, well, I mean, certainly for you know, Survivalist as a 5-piece band, there's not enough room,
Definitely
you know, on
not,
that stage, you know, there's not enough room in that, you know, for 4 people, never mind 5, you know, people trying to, you know, put on a show. So I think you found for a Survivalist, it was Gavin was just out in the crowd.
On the floor.
Floor. In fact, there was a lot of that gig played on the floor. You know, I think if we're talking about strictly from a viewer's point of view, yeah, that's a great place. You know, as a punter's place, I really like that. But as a place, you know, you're going for band.
Yeah, a lot of bands might be, we can't fit in there. It just won't work. Our stage show won't work. I mean, you think of loads of bands these days are getting scrims done. Yeah. You go to a Strangle Wire show, they've got their scrims. You go to an Acetate show, they've got their scrims.
Yeah.
It'd be a waste of time even bringing them to somewhere like the Speakeasy. But still somewhere I'd happily go for a gig. I mean, it's no Voodoo, but where is?
And I don't think the actual Students' Union up the road's not far away either from being completed. You know, it's they have put a new venue in there. I've seen it. It's not great.
What do you think of Survivalist?
Class.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's just, you know, these guys have come in very, very quickly, put a big statement in the Belfast scene that they're one of the best about. Mm-hmm. You know, it's warranted. It's not a title just given to them because they've got ex-members of, you know, other great bands from Belfast and various things. They've 100% earned it. Yeah. And Gavin on the vocals, you know, I think I've said it before, he's certainly one of the best vocalists for that style of music that he does, the clean and the harsh stuff.
100%.
In Belfast, definitely 100%.
Yeah. Whenever we first seen them was Metal to the Masses. That was their first show. This was only their second show, but they've changed drummer, they've changed bass player since then, and I almost view it as like the Metal to the Masses show was like a dummy run, you know. And this is the lineup. I get the impression this is locked in. This is who the band's going to be now, and I'm really excited to see what's coming next. I know they've new material in the works, and probably shouldn't be saying this, but I've been told it's heavier, so I can't wait to hear that. Really looking forward to seeing what's in store for Survivalist. Yeah. Cracking band. Farm Wolf filled in for Oracle. Yeah. Shame we didn't get to see Oracle because they're a great band, and obviously we've not seen them in a long time. I confess, it was like getting back to these gigs. You see a lot of people you haven't seen in a long time, and I was bumping into people, and I ended up chatting outside for most of Farm Wolf's set. So I apologise to Farm Wolf for not catching them all. I caught the first song and I caught the last song, and the last song was the first EP. They put a 4-track EP out. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the last track of it, and to me it's the best track off the first EP. I know they finished with that, and coming back in it was like, that sounds actually pretty damn good. So I kind of regret skipping their set. But did you watch them?
Yeah, I watched all of it, and was really pleasantly surprised. You know, they obviously were meant to be taking part in Metal to the Masses, and we didn't get there. Mm-hmm. But I was actually very impressed. I thought they were good. It was their second gig in 2 days as well. I think they played the Wednesday and then immediately, you know, at very short notice. And, you know, fair play to the guys for taking that at, you know, 2-3 days notice. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thought, you know, they themselves sort of were saying we don't feel like we belonged on that bill, you know, if you know what I mean.
I can understand that, yeah.
But I think they felt, actually, I didn't feel it was out of place really whenever they did play. I actually quite enjoyed it and went, you know what, that's refreshing, it's good. There's a bit of a, you know, sing along to it if you want, you know, in certain places. So I was impressed. I liked them.
And then the band of the night, Worn Out.
Yes.
Up from Cork. I thought they were fucking brilliant. Just
unbelievable.
Intensity the whole way through. Like, their music is relentless. It doesn't stop. There's no time for breathers. it's just like a hammer in the face, and I absolutely love them. From stage diving, getting carried about the crowd. The drummer is Evan, who, if you watch the Metal Cell podcast, you'll know Evan. Just blistering on drums all night long. The whole band, fucking great. Good sort of. It's hardcore, but it's not that sort of, two-dimensional hardcore. There's a bit more to it. I really, really loved it. Loved it. Went nuts.
This was absolutely fantastic. I have not seen Worn Out before. I think they have been up before, if I'm right in saying. Can't remember, but unbelievable. Just as you rightly say, from start to finish, an assault on the senses for everyone. Again, a lot of that gig played on the floor in front of the stage.
Yeah.
Bassist I remember being on like a pillar, standing up on a pillar, and I had my health and safety hat on, and I was like, please get down safely. I was worried for, I suppose it's it's an intense gig when you've got people worrying for your safety, but fantastic, as you rightly say. Evan on the drums is just relentless. The energy coming from the bass, and Alex on the guitar, fantastic. And I proper hardcore dancing in the middle as well.
Yeah. I couldn't help myself. Every now and again, there's that just wee rhythm that just kind of
just kicks you.
I'm not just going to stand here with my beer and watch a band. It's not happening tonight.
Yeah.
Really, really good night. Kind of busted myself, I'll be honest. After about 4 songs, I was standing at the side going, gasping for breath. But definitely a good gig. And then afterwards, you didn't make it down to Voodoo after?
I didn't, unfortunately. I wasn't able to, but I kind of dropped the guys down and shuttled about.
There was a crazy exercise in logistics of how to get, because Worn Out were staying up here. They had to get their gear somewhere. But we had to get everyone down to Voodoo. You gave different people lifts. There was people jumping in taxis. I made it down to Voodoo and caught Hornets, who are a band I've been on the fence about for a long time. They changed vocalist fucking years ago, and I was never that fussed on them after that. This time, I loved them. I thought they were absolutely brilliant, and again, it is just really, really, really high energy. I think I would call it, again, there's definitely an element of hardcore within Hornets, maybe post-hardcore, that sort of thing. But their live stage performance, everyone goes nuts on stage. Like, I don't think anyone in the crowd was everyone was just kind of like standing watching, but the 4 of them on stage just went absolutely ballistic. Constant movement, jumping about, rolling about the floor, throwing themselves about. Just a really, really energetic band. I think a lot of other bands could learn from them. I'm not saying they should copy them and do the same thing, but just appreciate that there's something to be gained from a lot of kineticism on a stage, and not just standing playing your instruments. Obviously, depending on the band, you don't want a doom band throwing themselves about like a bunch of mad cunts,
Would be an interesting one to see, wouldn't it? Yeah.
And then Elder Druid finished the night, and again, plenty of beers I made at that stage, but Elder Druid never disappoint, not once. They played some new songs, and you look at an album like Golgotha and you think, you can't follow that up. You can't put out another album as good as that. The riffs on there are just outstanding. And judging by what we heard that night, they're gonna. This new album's gonna be even better.
Pure stink. Yeah,
it is. It's filthy. And again, they perform the songs. It's not just a band on stage playing songs, they're performing it. Everyone in the band just has a role. And again, sometimes when you have that many people in a band, there's 6 of them, because of 2 bass players now.
Yeah.
Sometimes in that situation, everything gets a bit lost and a bit muddled. I find when you're in Voodoo watching Elder Druid, you can pick out the sounds of what everyone's doing. Nice and clean. Everyone has a role. Everyone has a place in that band, and it works so good.
Yeah, and then certainly Elder Druid, again, another sterling performance at Bloodstock, which they've just released the footage of. So check that out, absolutely. But having that double bass that they do, it's like they fill out that low end. There's absolutely no room for any more sound out of that band because they have every pocket filled. The low end completely stacked.
And then the last thing I just want to mention about that night was Voodoo. I mean, Speakeasy had a good crowd, without a doubt. Voodoo was absolutely rammed, and that was 5 local bands, 5 bands from here, no touring bands, and it was on a Thursday night in Belfast, and it might be the busiest I've ever seen Voodoo. It was absolutely packed out, and it was amazing to see it. So happy to see that. Like, it was literally difficult to get to the front to get photos.
Yeah, I think that certainly Jake as a promoter, there's a Dark Arts now that he's going under. Really, just he's pretty good at it, and putting together a bill that they always do. Every Crypt of the Riff has been great, and the bands that have been on them, he puts together a good gig. Now, it's probably a bit outside the realms of it. Feels more of a this Microfest thing that we always kind of like talk about, because there's normally Gigstables, so we've got like 4 4 bands max anywhere else, whereas you'll get 6, maybe get 7. It's tremendous value, like Crypt of the Riff. So it's, and I know he's got more, I think, lined up. I still think Stone Jesus have to come next year, and I think there was another one he had in the works as well that got pushed back. So Crypt of the Riff, they always stick out a stinking merch t-shirt as well, which is great. Like I'm a sucker for merch. Like,
right, should we take a quick break there, grab a beer, and we'll catch us back in a second.
A few moments later.
That's us back. Bladders emptied, fresh beers. Moving on then, next gig, yet another gig. We were at plenty of gigs in the last month. Sky Pilot, Haint, and Psychedelic. Was this just a gig, or was this a launch party, or I can't even remember. I think it was just a show, wasn't it?
Was it not? There was like a 2-year anniversary of the front or something, or
is that what it was?
It might have been. I can't remember, but
too many details.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, there's a lot to remember.
But first up on that gig was Psychedelic. Now, I'll be honest, I've always liked Psychedelic, but I would never have said I would have been the biggest fan until this show. They completely won me over. I think just the last time we seen them was Metal to the Masses, and I think sometimes when you're watching a band during Metal to the Masses, because it's competition, you've got this mindset of, or this band is good as this band, or this band is better than that band, and you're maybe a wee bit over-analysing them. And I know that that's how this podcast came to be, and it's our bread and butter. But I do think sometimes it can have a detrimental effect on your enjoyment of a band. I think this might have been the first time I seen Psychedelic, where it's just a gig, and I'm just watching them for the pleasure of watching them, and I fucking loved them. I thought there was like lots of changes in pace, lots of different styles, like psychedelic stuff, a wee bit of funk, like lots of they don't sound like Clutch, but they gave me
vibes,
Clutch feels, really good band to watch. Everything worked. Apologies, I can't remember the name of the drummer. We should really do our homework before we do these fucking podcasts. But it's the same drummer from Victim Royal, and then I learned he plays for another band with a guy called Steve, who used to run gigs. I think he still does, around the Ulster Sports Club and whatnot. Just loved it. Everything sounded great. I thought, anyway. What about yourself, Psychedelic?
Loved it. I think whenever we seen them first at that Metal of the Masses, that kind of first introduction to them, like I think as soon as they finished, you went, well, what do you think of that? And I went, that's right up my avenue. It was there, So like there's the kind of like I kind of feel in the way that you're going with the Clutch vibes. There's a certain like at times like there's a Mastodon-y vibe, certainly from the drums.
I thought Baroness would have been a good comparison as well.
Yeah. No, and again, certainly like that. Those vibes, I think, for me, stem from the drums and the way that sort of the style that he plays and the way that he writes. You know, it is fills. It's fills for days. You know. And I always use this analogy, and I love it, but so I have to put it in somewhere. It's like more fills than a good soda, you know. It's like that's the style of drumming that I do quite like. Now there is something to be said for certain styles of drumming that, you know, less is more sometimes. But in this instance, I think it works, and I enjoy watching it. And again, it's you know, it's I think, you know, I'm always watching the drummer. You know, if the drummer is doing a good job, it becomes the focal point of where I'm looking. I want to see what they're doing, and yeah, certainly I was speaking to the guy actually the week following, and I was saying, you know, I really enjoy your drumming. I think you know, you certainly, and he actually, I said to him, I think, you know, you're like a mini Bron Taylor, you know, in a way, and he took that as quite a large compliment, which you would, to be fair. But you know, he did he loved that one. But no, great band, and again, I really enjoy listening to them and watching them perform. I think the sound of the night, certainly for, I suppose, Hint and you know, Psychedelic and all, I think the actual guitar was low in the mix. And it was, you know, it was a wee bit, you know, lacking, and I don't know whether that's again, like, here sound guys, you know, haven't done this in a couple of years either. Yeah. And also I think, you know, we're putting fewer. There are fewer gigs, metal gigs on in the limelight. Are the sound guys familiar with the style? Because I think, you know, metal's one of those things that you've got to get right. And he certainly missed it a wee bit, I think, on that occasion. It's
something I've stopped doing. I used to, like, this is going way back, but whenever I walked into the limelight, whenever James used to put on the Rock D or Rock KD, whatever your preference of calling it, and he put on gigs in the limelight, and I don't think I was the only one that used to do this. You'd walk in and you'd be like, who's doing sound today? Yeah. There was a guy called Brian, and I assume he's moved on to bigger and better things, but any time you seen Brian, it was like, fucking brilliant. Brian's on the day. You just know the sound's gonna be fucking spot on. I've kind of stopped doing that in Voodoo, or sorry, not in Voodoo, in Limelight. You know, in Voodoo, it's gonna be Beard. Yeah, and it's gonna be good. And
it's gonna be great.
Yeah, it's lights and everything's just gonna be fucking spot on. Yeah. I don't even stand in Voodoo anymore and go, the sound's good. It's got to the point where there's just, you know, it's gonna be good. There's an expectation it's gonna be good. And it always is.
It's reliable. It's so reliable.
And I've started going out to gigs in Voodoo, and I'm not even thinking about it. It's not even part of the conversation anymore. Yeah. As you say, that day in Limelight, it was definitely off a bit. And I specifically noticed it during Haint's set when you kind of nudged me and went, "Can you hear the guitars? Because I can't." And I was like, "Fuck, now you mention it." And I'm kind of like, I'm honing in on Ian, the guitar player. Yeah. And it's like, he's picking, and I'm not picking up anything from that, and there was a big heavy bass, like you could pick up a bass, no problem at all. Still thought Haint's set was good. They're an interesting band, time signatures that your average person will not understand. You know, someone literally came up to me after their set and said, you know, they're a fucking good band, but it's way too smart for me. You know? and I do think that's something. Great band to watch, incredibly interesting, just really, really well crafted musicians that really know their stuff, really know music. Like, that's not someone who's picked up a guitar and learned how to play Enter Sandman. You know, that's someone who knows music theory inside and out and writes songs off the back of it. Yeah. I do think they're fantastic musicians. I think an aspect of it goes over the head of the audience, and I think if the sound ain't right, you don't get to fully appreciate what the band are doing. Yeah,
I think Hint is music for musicians, almost, like in a roundabout way. But
there's bands I've said before is that guitarist is playing two other guitarists, rather than to the audience.
And I thought they were great. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
they are.
And again, look, we have only seen them once before at Metal to the Masses in that very first gig, which obviously was in Voodoo, and the sound was great, you know, and they blew me away there. And certainly now we've got, like, you know, they went and it did feel that there was a bit lost in there, but still, like, I'm still loving it. You know, what you're right in what you're saying. There's 3 great musicians. You know, on that stage, the drums are perfect again. We're talking about, you know, back to the drums. If the drums aren't right, none of it is, and it's and they were on point. The bass then coming forward onto that, you know, the other rhythm was like, what was he playing? He was playing like a 6-string bass or something.
Yep.
You know, again, you don't see too many of them kicking about. You're like, the odd 5, you know, but no, here, have 6. You know, but that was great. You know, vocals on point, really delivered, and delivered with gusto as well.
I think the twin vocals really complement each other. That was something that really stood out to me.
Yeah,
that works brilliantly.
So I want to see more Haint.
Exactly, I'd say the same. I want to see them again, and I want to see them. I hate to say this, but I want to see them in Voodoo.
I think I've said that quite a few times. It's like, if I want to see anyone, I want to see them in Voodoo.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they haven't put any material out yet, so I think that's a big thing as well. Getting to know the songs before going to the gig always helps, as far as I'm concerned. The headliner of the band that night was Sky Pilot, and fuck me, I don't know what it is about Sky Pilot, right? But I never get excited for a Sky Pilot gig. I never feel there's a buzz for their shows, and I never feel people talk about them as much as they should. And I'm guilty of it as much as anyone who I'm saying that about. Because I'll go to a Sky Pilot gig going, yeah, sure, come on, let's go down, Sky Pilot, why not? A couple of beers, it'll be good crack. And then every time they take the stage, they'll play something like, you know, I can't remember the name of the song that I'm thinking of right now, John 4, for example, and they just blow my face off every fucking time. I think the riffs are incredible. The sound they make for a 3-piece is
it's obscene.
Is sick. They've had the same lineup forever, because I'm pretty sure they've been around forever. I don't remember going to gigs in Sky Pilot not being a band that we're about, and I think that really helps having those same 3 guys always working together, or at least as far as I'm aware it's been the same 3 guys. I'm not aware of any lineup changes with Sky Pilot. Some of the songs just hit so fucking hard. It's really explosive, and loads of it's really chill and mellow. When it really gets going, it just comes out of nowhere, and there's real stomp with it. Like I've said 100 times before, I love stomp. I love something that really fucking thumps in the music. They have a song called Thumper, you know. So don't they? Yeah, I might get mixed up because I know the Regent Speedhorn have a song called Thumper. I'm pretty sure Sky Pilot do too. I'm really getting mixed up now.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, but don't talk myself on that, to be quite honest.
I just second guessed myself whenever I thought about the Regent Speedhorn song. But yes, I thought they were outstanding. One of the things I've criticised bands before is getting on stage, playing a song, and then having this quietness, and playing a song and having this quietness. Some bands can get away with it if they've got a good crowd and there's a lot of noise and stuff. There can be awkwardness between songs, and I really hate that when the room just goes really quiet and everyone's just kind of standing there like, play the next song, please. Sky Pilot have a very unique style of patter on stage. The bridges between the songs, you know, I mean, they kept making jokes about each song being their big hit. And they always have a bit of a crack and joke about them being a metal band from Doak, you know. It just works. All of it just works. It works really well, and I thought it was an exceptional set. I loved it.
I think what we're saying there about the sound being bad, it remedied itself whenever Sky Pilot came on.
It did,
because that, you know, as you said it blew your face off. It did. You know, the guys got on stage, and like, I think over the sort of like past 2 years, you kind of and the emergence of, I suppose, of a lot of new bands, and we talk about an awful lot of new bands, and you've got the new bands that we talk about, Sky Pilot kind of aren't there because they're not playing with them, so we don't see them sometimes. Now we've seen them quite a lot recently, but I think I forgot how good they are live.
I do it every time, every single time, and I promise you the next time there's a Sky Pilot gig, I'll be the same again, and I'll be like, all right, I guess we'll head down to that. They're decently bad.
And you're right in what you're saying. Like it's the noise that those guys make for a 3-piece is class, and with the Gareth and the bass, like is part of that reason. That there never seems to be any lack of punch in what they deliver. Right. He's if you actually watch him, he's playing kind of, I want to say, double time to what Dave is. Is Dave in it?
Yep.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
that's right. I knew it was. Me and Arse himself. Anyway, 10-2. But so like, it just seems that little bit of extra, like that extra couple of notes in there every once in a while, just sort of seems to help fill it out. Yeah. And again, brilliant, really loved it.
One wee thing that I love that they've done, because I'm a big fan of bands kind of, not just, to make it as a band today, it's not good enough to write good songs and perform them well. We live in a world completely like drenched in social media and advertising and marketing, and to become a band, whether you like those things or not, you kind of have to go down that road. They've done a wee bit of branding in that they've got t-shirts done up, and each t-shirt just has 3 little squares on it. Yeah. But Dave over to the left, his little square is a bigger one on the left.
Yeah,
the drummer has the bigger one in the middle. Gareth has the bigger one over the right. And it just, when you see the way those t-shirts are done and they all line up, it's just like, that's fucking cool.
Yeah,
it's really subtle branding, and I love it. And again, I've talked about this fuck knows how many times, but you have to look like a band. You can't look like 5 different guys on stage doing 5 different things. It needs to come together to look like a fucking band, and I love that. And it's just a wee thing, really well executed.
Yeah,
and I love that. Let's move on though, because we could talk about fucking some of these gigs all night long. The same night, again another double gig, 2 gigs in one night. Straight after that, we nipped round to the Deer's Head to catch. The bands that were playing were Buck Egypt, Booze and Glory, and Takers and Users. Booze and Glory were the headlining band, and of all the bands we've seen, they're the only band that have toured, the only band that have come from somewhere else. They're an English band. We missed Buck Egypt because there was a wee bit of overlap between those 2 gigs.
I think we caught maybe the last couple of tunes.
I think I was at the bar, so
yeah. I think I caught the last couple because I had to run around and get cash and stuff.
It doesn't count, and so I watch you from the bar.
Yeah.
But Takers and Users were on that night. I've talked about Takers and Users I don't know how many times in the podcast. There's not much more I can say. I fucking love them. It's great sing-along, oi punk music. They're the only band that have ever made me feel proud to be from Belfast, and they're fucking brilliant. Takers and Users, it's probably not up your street, oi punk, that sort of thing.
No, something new for me. Certainly is that style of like music, and I have to say, actually, I really enjoyed it. I'm not the person that's going to be down there singing the songs because I don't know them. But certainly, like what I seen, I really enjoyed. I thought they were great. And again, it's about this attitude that they sort of like project into the crowd. And again, it's punk, isn't it? It's that kind of you're at my show kind of thing.
We're all in this together.
And and this is it, and we're having a good time. So I thought, it was. I really actually enjoyed their performance. Thought they were great.
Yeah, and then Booze and Glory. They're a band that first time I seen Booze and Glory was in New York. I went to a hardcore weekender, and it was just hardcore band, and right in the middle of it was Booze and Glory, all the way from England. And I listened to a wee bit of them beforehand and went, oh, it's all like fucking cockneys and cockney geezers, and that was like, that's a wee bit cringe, I've no interest in this whatsoever. But I grabbed a beer and I watched them, and this was at the festival. And literally, I was singing along to most of their songs, despite never having really listened to them. And from then onwards, I just fell in love with Booze and Glory. I think it's brilliant. I love a good sing-along at a punk show, you know. I think that's what a lot of bands miss, like not having a good hook in your song means there's a bit of traction there between getting your audience to participate, you know. But oi music is just written for that. I'm sure these guys are sitting writing lyrics, and in their head they're seeing the crowd sing along with them and stuff.
Like it's written specifically for that.
And that's what it was. It was just getting up the front. I mean, I was literally right up the front, sang my heart out all night long. They played pretty much all the songs I wanted them to play. They were absolutely brilliant. They were hanging about with people afterwards, getting selfies. There was none of this meet and greet shite that I cannot abide whatsoever. And good vibes, really, really good vibes that night. And it was a gig in a venue that we'd all been to for the first time. Well, you'd been there for host.
I was there for the host one, but I like the game. I like the Deer's Head. I think it's
my first time at a gig in the Deer's Head. From memory, now again, throwing booze on me like there was no tomorrow that night. But I remember being very bright, which to me worked for that kind of gig. That was fine.
Now that you mentioned it, like
in my mind, the memories are. Maybe it was because I was right up the front and the stage was lit up, and I wasn't really.
Or is it because there's windows? I don't know.
I have no clue. It felt very, very bright. So I'd be curious. I know there's bound to be metal gigs getting put on in there.
I know there's a one in maybe April, based.
Are they playing there?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. No, they might have moved that to Voodoo. It was meant to be there.
I was going to say, because if you put a band like that, they're like really sludgy, doomy stuff. Is that right?
No,
I got the wrong band.
It's kind of quite deathish kind of stuff. But
is there a band called Bast?
Might be. I think we've discussed this before, but anyway,
not sure. It's like Death and Dath. I get those two mixed up.
Yeah, no, it's like bass. You know that like E and the A that they have. They came and they played Voodoo before with they supported Decapitated, Discarnate, and various other things.
I missed that gig and it was gutted. I missed that gig.
It was a good one. I liked it.
Discarnate or something else. Booze and Glory, brilliant gig. Great to see an actual gig take place that had a touring band, because so much shit, despite the fact that restrictions are lifted, people are getting the dreaded shit left, right, and centre. Tours are getting cancelled, and transport can't happen. So it was just. I was not letting myself get excited for that gig until I was through the door and like literally saying, right, merch is up, they're fucking here, this is happening, you know. Moving on, next gig. I think this one was something special. It was a gig that had been postponed fuck knows how many times at this stage. It was Acid Age doing their launch party for Semper Pessimus, a sort of Greek inspired
Roman.
Sorry, Roman. I should have fucking known that. I really should know that.
You've done a video for fuck's sake.
Roman inspired, and I've forgotten the name of it. Like when an album has an entire story.
Concept album.
That's the word I'm looking for. Flip's sake. Give me a break. We haven't done this for 2 years. So the gig had been postponed. I don't know how many times. It finally happened. I think there was opportunities for them to put it on as a seated gig, and to my understanding, they were like, "No, this has to be a proper gig." The turnout to me was something else.
It was unbelievable.
Not just the number of people through the door, but the energy and enthusiasm of the ones that came was off the fucking chart. It was like nothing I've seen at a local gig in so many years. Before the first band came on, and it was Mortal Backlash that were playing first, I walked around to get set up to take photographs, and there was kids already moshing and headbanging to Metallica that was being played, and it was just like, if that's the way these kids are getting on now, what are they going to be like when an actual band takes to the stage? And Mortal Backlash did take to the stage, and it was crazy. It was absolutely insane right from the start.
Yeah.
For a band that have played, what, 2-3 gigs maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at max, these guys have quite literally came onto the scene very, very recently, and have kind of like actually caused a bit of a stir to a degree. You know, the sort of the proper old school thrash, element of them, and I like they bring a crowd Like there's a lot,
Yes,
and
they
they you know, and again, I don't know whether they're like 18, 19, 20 and around that ballpark, and they're bringing, I suppose, younger fans and younger people that may not be familiar with our scene.
Yeah.
And the thing that I actually, you know, that I like them for is that, well, I like them for a number of reasons, but you know, bringing people to the scene and you know, even if they bring 100 people, say for sake of talking, 4 of them or 5 of them end up coming regularly, well, that's a win. You know, you know, we want people to come into the scene and participate and be active sort of members of it, and you know, they're certainly helping with that, like absolutely. Not to mention the fact that actually the performance was great.
Yeah.
You know, the energy coming off the stage, it's the, you know, the again, you know, get to the front, you know, come and see us play, and you rightly said, you know, the Voodoo was absolutely rammed. I think there was over 140 like pre-sold tickets to that gig, you know, which is madness when you think about it, because certainly I think an awful lot of the people, you know, they're there to see Acid Age. In fact, it's a stacked bill: Acid Age, Crossfire, and Mortal Backlash. It's a fucking great night of thrash. 140, and you know, for those 3 bands, most people I think will have paid the door. You know, so there was probably another load as well.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
It's a serious turnout.
The last time we seen Mortal Backlash, if memory serves me right, they played 2 covers. I remember one of them was Mother by Danzig. Don't ask me what the other one was.
It was a Sodom cover, I think.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's definitely right. I don't think there was any covers this time, which means they're now at a stage where they have enough of their own material that they can carry a set. Which I mean, don't get me wrong, playing covers is great fun, but there's always a wee bit of like, I don't know how to put this, like you're not ready if you're having to put covers into your set. And don't get me wrong, we done this when I was in the band. We've done it all the time. It's almost like saying we're not quite ready to play our own full show. We've got 5 or 6 songs and we're having to bulk it up with these covers or whatever. Coming out and just saying we don't do that anymore. We've got an entire set of our own songs. Fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
That to me is a step up in such a relative short period of time. I know it's not a short period of time, but it's a short period of gigging time.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't gigs. Top notch, and the energy of them. You already said that, but they just look so happy to be on stage.
Yeah.
They want to be there. There's other bands we've seen, and you watch them and you kind of go, you don't look like you want to be here, and if you don't look like you want to be here, I'm not sure I want to be here either.
I think there's something about them. They like, they're confident. Like, the confidence is just through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to both be able to play without having to constantly look at your instrument, and just let rip. You know, that's a big thing for them, is that they you know, confidence is that their interactions with the crowd, because I think there's certainly the comfort element of some musicians where they want to look at their guitar because, you know, they're nervous maybe, and and that's a comfort. That's their place. I know what I'm doing here. That's fine.
Yeah.
Where these kids are out there, and just say kids sounds fucking patronizing, but these guys are out there and they are performing. They've skipped that nervous on stage business and are just fully out there embracing this thrash mentality, to throw chaos from the stage into the fucking crowd. So it's brilliant.
I think you said it in the night. If I was in the band, I would want Mortal Backlash on the bill.
Oh yeah.
I would want their crowd coming down to see our band. You know?
Yeah.
And I know it's almost, you could argue it's a tacky way of getting a crowd by booking
booking a band that brings a crowd.
I mean, I've seen it before. Like, Metal to the Masses, sometimes you see a band and they bring all their mates down and they've got a crowd because they've got a bunch of mates. And I'm not saying that isn't the case for Mortal Backlash, but the mates that they're bringing down, they're not there out of obligation.
No, they're thrashers.
Absolutely not.
Like
they're there to go fucking nuts and enjoy the show and have a brilliant night. and that's exactly what they did.
Like they're thrashers. Like that's it, you know. And again, as I say, like the thing that just I want to try and emphasize to any of those people is that, like, get down and support the rest of it, because the rest of it's good too. Do you know what I mean? Come down and you know, see other bands.
Definitely an element of not taking themselves too seriously either.
Yeah.
As was shown by the denim shorts and tops off.
Yeah. Denim shorts, tops off. I mean, you know.
And I think there was sunglasses as well. If
there was a couple of aviators on the go.
Definitely, it was good crack. And then support, second band on the night were Crossfire. Dublin based, am I right in saying that?
Dublin based, I believe. Yeah, certainly. And it's actually you know, the last bands, one of the last bands that I seen actually before everything shut down, and it was that weird gig that we had before it all went to shit. Was Acid Age, Crossfire, and Ifrian, you called them, from Scotland. But like, and it was kind of a bit of a coming full circle moment where you kind of had that borderline same gig again, coming back and at the other side, and have, you know, but having that raucous, like, fucking was raucous, like, you know, bit of it. So yeah, the Crossfire, I really enjoy them. They're very good. They are very good, and there's not an awful lot more really I can say about them, because I just sat there and loved it.
Or arguably uneventful set, but a solid set, if you know what I mean. I don't mean that in a negative way whatsoever. The one thing that did stand out to me, there was a track they'd done, it seemed like quite a long track, and there was no vocals, just an instrumental.
That instrumental
track.
Was unbelievable. Yeah.
And I'm not normally a fan of instrumental songs unless it's bad. I like instrumental bands, but if you're not an instrumental band, I'm not usually a fan of instrumental tracks. This one took me on a trip. It took so many turns, and I'm going to have to, I can't remember what the track was, I'm going to have to hunt it down. It was really, really good. Loads of different influences. Again, loads of changes in pace, which always keeps me interested. You know, speed it up, slow it down, bring it back.
Was it an attempt to write an Orion, do you think?
I would imagine that 90% of thrash bands have a point where they
try and do
exactly that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's like I can't remember the expression I'm trying to look for right now.
It's a sort of a right of way type thing, but they pulled it off really well. I thought actually that was the highlight of their set for me, was that just that instrumental. I just thought that's fantastic. You know, and I think first time they ever played it, written over, I suppose, you know, the downtime, and pretty good in a roundabout way. I thought, you know, it was brilliant, you know.
And then Acid Age took to the stage. I'm trying to describe this while juggling beers and bottle openers.
Bottle opener is brought to you by The Crawling. Merch available.
If someone had have described Acid Age's first 5 minutes of their set without me being there, I think I might have cringed. First off, they took to the stage like rock stars, right? They kind of stood back, there was a big intro, and then they walked up through the crowd. There was like slapping of hands, you know, from people reaching from the audience and stuff. And then there was a long drum solo. If someone just described that to me and I hadn't witnessed it, I would not have thought of that as very good. But whenever I did witness it, like Jude and all acting like rock stars, I just thought, you know what, why the fuck not? Because you're getting treated like rock stars right now. This crowd, you haven't even taken to the stage, and this crowd is going fucking nuts for you already. So why not? Why not just go for it and embrace that? And they did, and I just thought it fucking worked. And then the big drum solo, because they were playing the album start to finish, there is a big drum solo at the start. Who the fuck does that? Who starts an album with a big intro and then a drum solo?
Acid
Age. And as I say, all of it just fucking worked.
It all did. Yeah, it was great.
Don't get me wrong, it's not the wackiest thing they've done in their entire career, because they went down a path of...
I remember the violins though.
6 people on stage with a violin,
which actually was quite fun at the time. Like, yeah, definitely. I think they found their true calling, as it would be. You know, in like this lineup is the lineup that seems to be the one that's working.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, this is the best version of Acid Age, in my opinion anyway. They're a band, I've seen them whenever they first got together. I've seen so many interpretations of what they're trying to do, but now that they're back to a three-piece and they've got the right three guys, Jude knows exactly what he wants out of the band now. He knows the direction he's trying to take, or at least that's how I see it. Jake, I think I would easily say that Jake is my favourite bass player within the Belfast scene. I just love how he plays, how fast he plays, and that sort of that jazz influence.
It's very jazzy bass. I mean, it's definitely it's to throw the bass that he plays into the style of music.
Yep.
It's odd to listen to, but again, I'm all about these kind of odd, you know, do it, see if it works, and it does. So it does work. So we'll, you know, grand.
And then Aaron just seems to be getting better and better every single time we see him play.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, you know, as you sort of rightly said, well, the drum solo and various other things is you know, is it Bonham-esque? It's like, it's certainly there's a big round the kit everywhere, hitting everything. There's not a bit of that kit that hasn't been used, you know. it's thinking they're all still scintillating and, you know, vibrating because he only hit them, like, you know, 5 seconds ago or whatever. Like, everything's hit, you know, it's moving. The kit's alive with movement, you know.
And I've said this before, I'm not here, I don't do this podcast to blow smoke up people's asses or to, you know, get down on my knees and, you know, worship these bands or anything. There's many aspects of Acid Age that isn't my jam. Like, I've listened to that album 4 or 5 times, and is it the sort of stuff I would normally listen to? Probably not. It veers away from that. I love the approach they've taken. I love the influences they've thrown into a melting pot and just tried to create something fresh and new. I mean, they're not the first. You can go online and you will find other bands that have, you know, combined jazz and thrash. But I think they do it in their way, and that is unique. So am I going to rush home every night and listen to Semper Pessimist? No. Would I miss an Acid Age gig? Fucking hell no. I would be right there to see them again on any bill, provided it's not in McHugh's, you know.
There's a lot of hate for McHugh's.
I just don't like the place. But yeah, absolutely. If you have an opportunity to go and see Acid Age, Mortal Backlash or Crossfire, there are 3 bands I would just say get down there, catch those gigs, especially with the sort of crowds that they bring down. I would love to see more crowds like that in Belfast. It is so refreshing to see people go nuts rather than just standing with a beer watching a band.
I'm the most guilty of that. Like, I'm very much a stand with a beer and watch it. I kind of have my perch, if you would, in Voodoo up by where Andy is, and I kind of like, I watch that because I like to see across the crowd and into the band, just above that level. That's kind of just what I do. But it does anyway. Probably get this, but it takes me a good bit to get off that perch. You know, so and go down into the crowd, and certainly for that gig, I was in the crowd.
Yeah,
awesome, definitely.
Awesome show. Moving on then, what happened after that? The next gig we attended was Distortion Project Records launch night. So James Loveday, that runs Distortion Project, if you've been to any gigs in Belfast, you know exactly who he is and what the score is there. Started his own record label and assigned 3 bands to the record label. Those bands are Sky Pilot, who we've just talked about, Bakken and Lockhorns, and they ran a gig in Voodoo to kind of celebrate the launch of that record label. First up that night was Sky Pilot. What did you think of Sky Pilot that night? I know we just talked about it, so
yeah, I don't want to elaborate too much on them, but I think, you know, for that gig they certainly pulled out a couple of new tunes. Octofuzz, I think, was one of them, and whenever I listened to it, I was like, yeah, this is filth.
Yeah,
I really like it. I can't remember the other one, but certainly I can't remember the name of it, but you know, the new music that they're writing, if it's like that, well, you know, we're in for a good album, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Certainly, I think they're saying Octofuzz is probably going to be the first single released on the record label. But honestly, I thought, you know, if that's the direction they're going, I'm here for it.
I just thought that night the turnout was honestly not the best turnout we've seen at Voodoo. I think with things coming back, there's been a lot of gigs. I mean, we're sitting here, 6 weeks after things have opened up, talking about
9 gigs.
9 or 10 gigs.
Yeah.
There's a lot on. Something's going to suffer at some stage. And unfortunately, I think that was... If someone put a gun to my head and told me and asked me why wasn't there a crowd that night, I would say that it's because of the eclectic lineup. You know, you put on 3 thrash bands, I think you're going to get a crowd. You put on 3 doom stoner bands, you're going to get a crowd. I think, and I know it was the nature of the night, it was to celebrate the launch of the record label, so you got to have the bands that are signed. But I just don't think there was enough of a collective interest there to pull a crowd, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
It's kind of in a roundabout way, I know what you mean. If you'd had... trying to put 2 bands together here, but like I think if you'd had like Lockhorn's Oracle or something like that, like, you know, you'd have got that crowd. But that's what it is, you know.
I mean, if we were all put off by going to the occasional gig that didn't necessarily put as many people as we think it should, wouldn't be going to gigs.
No,
wouldn't be sitting here talking about them.
And I think I just want to probably touch on one thing, you know, and I know how much James deliberated on the decision that he had to make. Like I spoke to him on Saturday night Friday night. I spoke to him on Friday night, and he said he hated it. He absolutely hated having to make that decision. You know, it was not easy for him. You know, so he's arrived where he's got. You know, and that's the thing. So like, you know, I think I empathise with him. You know, pick your favourite 3 bands out of you know how many, and try and make it, you know. And again, he's sort of going, he's like, yeah, I know there's people that, you know, they're going, why didn't you pick them? But you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, he's got to make that call.
Absolutely,
you know?
Absolutely, can't be easy. Second that night were Bakken. I thought Bakken were, in my head, Bakken were a thrash band. I think maybe they used to be. I haven't seen them. I think their last gig, it was quite some time ago. I had it in my head it was 5 years ago, and I have seen them about the scene, but they seem to be a band that comes and goes. I know that this was a new lineup for Bakken, and their first show with this lineup, first show as a band in a very long time. I have to confess I wasn't a fan. There was little bits of it that showed promise to me. They played a song called Cold Hearted Murder, if memory serves me right. And there was a bit during that song where everyone in the band, or at least most of them, leaned into the microphone and shouted the title of the song, that Cold Hearted Murder. And it was like gang vocals, and it gave me that sort of thrash vibe. And at that stage, I'm kind of like this. I like this. If they'd done this, I'd be on board. But apart from those little moments, a lot of it was more like that new wave of British heavy metal. It was sort of like Iron Maiden. It was very operatic vocals. And as much as I'm a fan of Iron Maiden, I've never liked that style of music outside of Maiden. And I think that's very much what they're going for at this stage. I also thought they seemed cramped on stage. They seem to struggle with the space on stage, which is kind of odd, because I find that, like, you can have Elder Druid and they make it work despite there being an extra person there. They seem cramped. Well, one thing I really did like about them, their bass player seemed to be having a lot of fun with it. Big smiles, kind of dancing about, and silly expressions and stuff. That's what I honed in on, because I always try to focus on the aspect that I enjoy. He reminded me of, there's a member of Sabaton who does silly antics and messing about on stage. Reminded me of that. But overall, it was a wee bit too much new wave of British heavy metal. It was a wee bit what I would call throwback metal. It's not trying to be current or forward thinking. It's just it's that old thing. We're doing that.
Can we
old
invent
thing
a
that bands
genre
used to
called
be.
classic metal? You know, it's, you know, you've got classic rock.
It is. It's exactly that. It is classic metal. And I thought the band maybe should have. They needed to show a wee bit more. We want to be here and we're enjoying ourselves on stage. I get that for some people, it's a long time since I've been on stage. There might have been nerves, that sort of thing to deal with. I just didn't get that. There's so many bands that I've seen come back to the stage, and there's that just, fuck me, it's great to be back here.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that from Bakken at all, which I thought was a shame. Some technical difficulties as well, and I don't hold that against them. But that shit fucking happens. It just happens.
They really dealt with those
absolutely
very well. I think, you know, it was the lead guitar went out, and then sort of, you know, the lead guitar went out, and the rhythm guitarist he noticed and was able to pick up, you know, where it had been left off. And I, you know, again, that just shows a band that kind of they know their own songs inside out.
Definitely.
You know, and I'm going to be quite honest here and say, look, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Again, it's a genre, new wave of British heavy metal, which is where I would have classed that, where I'd have put it. I don't get it. I don't, you know, here's me a metaler. I don't like Priest. I don't like Maiden. You know,
you're not the first person.
And I don't like, you know, any of that. Like, I've never gotten into it, and for me, that's what it was. And certainly, I think, you know, again, it's a long time since obviously these guys have actually played. So, you know, there are going to be nerves. It's going to be, you know, this stagecraft thing that you always talk about is kind of getting the stagecraft just right. Is probably difficult. And I just sort of thought that certainly whenever those technical difficulties were happening, it was, I kind of felt that actually the lead singer didn't help the situation by looking at it.
I get what you mean.
Because, you know, because he kept looking at it. He was like looking to his left all the time, and I was just like, something's wrong here. What's happening? And, you know, I think if, you know, from a point of view of actually what you maybe, again, look, I'm no professional, I'm no expert, but if you can take that the focus away from that,
absolutely,
it would be.
That's almost your job.
It would have worked better, but you know, there we go. We've got Sky Pilot and Bakken, and then, well,
and just one last point on Bakken. I don't run this podcast to knock bands or to discourage anyone. I definitely think there's a market for what they're doing. I think if you put those on the lineup with Storm Zone, Conjuring Fate, and Bakken, that audience would lap that up.
And actually, that's a stacked gig, like for what that is. You know those three bands, you know, and again, there's a big like market for that.
Absolutely, you know? Yeah. And then the last band that night was Lock Horns. Now, gutted. I had somewhere else to be that night. Don't really want to say in this podcast, but it was a techno all-nighter. But I had to shoot on because where we were going was actually a lock-in. So if you weren't there for 11:30, you weren't getting in. So I only caught the first maybe 2 songs of Lock Horns, and I almost wish I hadn't seen any of it, because those 2 first songs just... Well, we're talking recently about, you know, bands that came back on stage that were just so fucking excited and buzzing and full of energy to be back on stage. Well, Alex from Lock Horns just completely embodied that. We've seen him go nuts on stage before, and I don't think I've seen him go this nuts. Like, it was points where he was just walking up to the front of the stage and just scream, like, forget the microphone, just walking up and screaming at the crowd.
It's always something he's been able to do, is to, in a crowd or in a venue packed with people, still manage to rise above and, you know, without a microphone, make himself heard.
Absolutely. Just the energy off the band was incredible. I can't even remember the two songs. I think it was two songs off the first album that they played. Did they play anything new? Did I miss anything in terms of that?
They did.
Got it.
I think they played. I want to say they played two new songs.
Because I've been told that they've got new songs in the chamber.
Yeah.
And that's always been my criticism of Lock Horns, that they put that EP out, the Lock Horns EP out, and they gigged the fuck out of it to the point where it was kind of like, right, I think we need something new. And obviously having a 2-year gap, I know, depending on how people tackle that, some people might come out of it with new material, some people won't. But I'd heard on the grapevine that there was new Lock Horn songs to be heard, and it was like, this new gig, this is the opportunity to hear them. And then I skipped out.
Yeah, honestly, that was a unbelievable gig, and I'm gutted for you that you had to leave early. To be honest, it was reasonably special. Actually, we know what they put out there on that evening. It was certainly from my point of view as a punter, it was just, that's what I just wanted. Like, since coming back, I suppose we've been to a lot of gigs, and I think that was the one that was, I don't want to say the first one, but it was certainly the one for me, because I suppose a reasonably large, very large Lock Horns fan, and just sort of the way that it came and fucking, I just went, we're back. That was
the moment.
That was that, and I just went. I think it was the first time I allowed myself to kind of get lost in it. That was the thing. And I think that it was the first time that I allowed myself to sort of just relax and not overanalyze and stuff. I'm just going, I know these songs, I'm singing, I'm giving it, and that was it. And it was I had a lot of fun. That night. And Lock Horns again. You talk about the sing along. They have it. They have that sing along element to them that they can bring, which is great.
We're going to take a very brief break because I think we might be having technical problems. Right, and we're back. Technical issues kind of resolved, mostly, I think.
Maybe.
We'll see when it comes to editing this shit together. The very last gig that we were at was 2 nights ago, and that was the Crawling playing a celebration. Well, it was their cassette launch release for Anatomy of Loss, which was their first album that they put out. In my opinion anyway, their best album, and their best of 2. What a fucking night. To me, this night was, we've been to so many gigs leading up to this. I think this was the first gig I've been to coming back that I just really fucking was like, really, this is why I go to gigs. This is what it's all about for me. But we'll start from the start. Navney kicked things off. There was only 2 bands, The Crawling and Navney, and Navney kicked things off. Phil, what do you think of Navney?
I thought Navney were fucking excellent. Really, like, just fucking brilliant. Again, it's a weird one. I think we've discussed it before, and it's about like the people. I certainly feel that there's people that'll go to the Limelight that won't go to Voodoo for a gig. So whenever they see like a Distortion Project gig on in the Limelight, they'll go, but they just for some reason won't come and transfer to Voodoo. But long story short, I think actually there was a lot of people there quite early and were there for both bands really. I think Navney sort of like they were pissed off that people weren't coming up to see them
visibly
pissed off, and kind of I think that's actually a wee bit part of their stick as well. Like, it's like it's part of their thing. It's like, fuck you all. I think they definitely called everyone cunts at this point in time. But that's fine, for me, because again I think it's part of their wider stick. But no, I thought they were brilliant, and that's that they're out there, and fucking again make quite a bit of noise for 3 people.
Yep.
There was one thing about Neemney that I will say is that every time I've seen them, they are the kings of really poorly designed guitar straps. Right? So, and let's not take away from the music here. I really don't, because actually the music was fucking spot on. It's the melody and various other things in there that they managed to get is brilliant. All of it, the guitars, the drums again, fantastic. But the bass, again, they're fantastic wee bands, and these guys aren't, they haven't played in 4 years.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
It's a very long time. They've come back and they've not missed a single beat in any way, shape or form. They came back like a band that have played a lot, and I think there was one wee thing actually, and again back to this guitar strap thing. I remember seeing them that I remember they had a chain, like a proper chain.
Yeah.
And I can recall the guitarist always, because it was obviously hurting him, and he's like, and then this sort of time it was all the nails through it, and sort of any time he headbanged, his hair was caught on it. I wouldn't like to see his I wouldn't like to see his hair the next day. No, I'm not making fun of him or anything, but honestly, it was a fucking good gig.
Good gig. Yeah. They're a band who have been through so many iterations, and they used to have Ali from Word of Mice doing vocals for them at one point. Steve, who is in Cursed Sun, used to be in bands like Red Six. He was doing bass for them. I think the second band we've talked about tonight, who have pulled it back to a 3-piece and who have massively benefited from it. And I don't mean any disrespect to the other guys that used to be in the band. I just think what they do, it works so much better as a 3-piece. And the other thing is, I generally speaking, I don't like black metal. I've tried listening to so many bands. I find that tremolo picking it grates on me. I find nothing about it heavy. I like my heavy music to be heavy and aggressive, and I find tremolo picking to be not that. But if anyone went and seen Neemney that night in the Limelight and said that what they played wasn't heavy, they're probably broken.
Yeah.
Because it was heavy as absolute fuck.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those bands where everyone in the band is just contributing perfectly. Yeah. John's drumming, I think I said to someone on the night that if he played any heavier, my Burger King would have been all over the fucking floor, What you were talking about with Pete coming up to the front of the stage and literally screaming at the band and kind of staying in that black metal character with the sort of, I would call them goblin vocals, and screaming for people to come forward and to move and to headbang and to do something, please react to what we are doing here. It just showed that it was just aggression. It was just pure aggression for, what was it, a 30-minute set?
Yeah, and
constant.
Yeah, and I think the thing is sort of you're right in that there's the character, and there's the character of black metal and various other things is a disdain for human beings in general, and they do deliver that.
I mean, if you're in a black metal band and you came to the front of the stage and went, right lads, come on, fill up the front a wee bit, and it'd be like, I'm not sure you've committed to this role.
You've not quite got it.
Yeah.
And I think some of my favourite parts actually are the melodic parts that they were putting in there, and just sort of the way that I don't want to say the slower parts, but just sort of the atmospheric parts that sort of bridge the heaviness, bridge the hell for leather. They've got the hell for leather bit, and again that's grand, but there's an awful lot in there that's to be loved about sort of some of that sort of just real nice clean picking, or just bringing us along on a wee bit of a story. And I have to say, Neely were absolutely fantastic. And no doubt about it.
Yeah, perfect band for that warm-up slot. There's a lot of bands could have done it. I know that the Crawling played with Words That Burn in Dublin for the same sort of launch. And as I say, Words That Burn, great band. The Crawling, exceptional band.
Don't know whether they work.
But is that, to me personally, is that the right band for that slot? And I know that was, to be fair, that was a different story because it was sort of a co-headline show. The point I'm trying to make is that Neve as a warm-up for the Crawling was perfect, and I can't think of a better band. Maybe Strangle Wire, but I think there's, with Pete from Strangle Wire and Andy from the Crawling being brothers, I think maybe there's a hesitancy to put those bands together because it looks like you're giving your bro a gig, that sort of thing. I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking out loud there.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yes, I think we both agreed. I went in expecting not to particularly enjoy an evening and walked away going, fuck me, 100% brilliant.
Yeah, I think I actually want to say the last time that I did see Neveney was in McCurry's. And I think they were different. I think they were maybe a 4 or 5 piece then, or like at that stage. But it's you're right, because I remember seeing Neveney, I think, in upstairs in the Egg, which is not fucking yesterday. I think Molar Bear played that gig. It's a random one. But they have arrived at that point where actually, what they're doing is great, and especially in the pocket of the genre that they're in, they're definitely a band to be respected.
And I think I've always thought, I know I'm coming from a different perspective because I'm not into black metal. The corpse paint, the get up, to me can sometimes again be a bit fucking cringy. They do it right. It's not. It doesn't come across as ridiculous or stupid. It just feels right. There's the right amount of blood, the right amount of paint. I think the fact that they're both fucking tops off and they've committed to it, and they're not standing there in like
it's not half-arsed, like
an Iron Maiden t-shirt with a wee bit of makeup. They go for it.
It's not half-assed. It's definitely full-assed.
And one thing, I know this is fucking. It's just me being like a bit nitpicky, but at no point did I go into the toilets and see the place a complete fucking mess. It's just something that bugs me when black metal bands go into the toilets and just fucking ruin the place.
I can't remember who it was. I
know exactly who it was, but I'm not going to call them out.
I remember there being a gig in the Limelight, there being a black metal band. I went in and the fucking place was absolutely covered in talc.
Yep. Shambles. But the headlining guys for that gig was the Crawling. What do you reckon, Crawling?
I don't know what I want to say here, because I'm going to be quite honest with you, and just so there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that these guys are easily the best band in Belfast, probably the best band in Ireland. It's a big one. But, whenever you are confronted with effectively what is hard facts, and they're on stage and they're delivering what they're delivering, the performance that they deliver is a performance of a touring band. And I mean a time-served touring band. And it's kind of what they are, actually. They are just fantastic in a roundabout way. That show was £7. £7 for that show. That was I don't want to say I don't want to say what money it was, but if you'd have told me around and said, "Here, that show's £15," I'd have paid it.
Well, I'll tell you what. We went to, this is the second time mentioning Burger King. The show's not sponsored, swear to fuck. But we went to Burger King before the show, and I spent more on Burger King than I did to get into that show.
Yeah,
and that ain't right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That show was worth a hell of a lot more than a shitty burger and some chips.
Yeah, I mean...
there you stick that on your the front of your album. Better than a shitty burger and some chips.
Need it in the back of a t-shirt or something, Crawling, the better than Burger King.
I 100% get what you're saying. What you're saying about going to see the Crawling no longer feels like going to see a band as part of our scene or as a local band.
It's bigger.
It's become bigger than that for every reason under the sun, because of the quality of the music, because of the quality of the performance, because it feels like an event. It's not like I'm going to skip this gig because I can see them in 2 months' time. You're not going to. The crowd that comes out, the atmosphere. There was one point I turned round. I mean, I was up the front for most of the show, so I didn't really get an idea of how the crowd were reacting to the band. And I was trying to get photos at the same time. But there was one point where I turned around to my right, and right across the room I seen a friend, and he literally both fists up in the air just screaming the lyrics.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is why we go to fucking gigs.
Yeah.
You know,
because it's not about going there to see your mates, almost like it's about, you know, going there to fucking, you know, have your face torn off. And you know, the thing that always, it's weird, right? So obviously, you know, the guys from the band, you know, I know the guys from the band. The guys, we talk to them, blah blah blah. But that's not who I get on stage.
I totally get that.
Like that's not who's on stage. It's a completely different thing. You know, the Andy that I talk to at the merch stall or outside the limelight is not the Andy that's on stage, because it's two different people. You know, it's exactly that's what it is. There's a different persona whenever they get on stage. They're in performance mode, and it's, well, you know, that's it. It's like, just
in terms of set list, I've said before, I've never shied away from saying that I think that album they put out, Anatomy of Loss, it's the best stuff they've done as far as I'm concerned. So to hear that in its entirety to me was just like, if you had asked me, what do you want to hear from the Crawling, I would probably have said all of Anatomy of Loss, Wolves in the Hideous White, as in the title track, and
Rancid Harmony.
Rancid Harmony's off. You're right, and Rancid Harmony, yes, and actually Choking on Concrete as well, but they're never going to fucking play that, so that's gone. I think that was almost like a demo track. I don't think we can count that as part of their discography anymore. But they played almost exactly what I wanted them to play. It was the perfect set list. It might have been the perfect Crawling gig for me.
Yeah.
In theory, nothing can live up to what they've done for me anyway. Brilliant gig, and it really, really felt, again, it was just another one of those feelings of, despite having been at 9-10 gigs, there was a real feeling of gigs are back on that night. Really, really good feeling that. And I mean, I didn't even have a beer the whole night. I was straight sober for the whole thing, which was in stark contrast to the last time that I seen them. 10 out of 10. Like, just doesn't get better than that as far as I'm concerned for gigs.
Not well, I don't even say in the local scene, because like as we've sort of said, it's kind of like it kind of transcends that a wee bit. You know, whenever the Crawling are in town, you know, you're taking note and you're going. You know, you're.
Apparently, they weren't going to play the entire album.
Right.
And they'd said this before on social media. I'd completely forgotten about this. They said it'd be a lot of work to, you know, learn the whole new album. And I just put up what I thought was a fucking throwaway comment saying, do the fucking work. But it seemed Andy took that on board, and he actually mentioned it during the show. And it was like, we weren't going to play the whole thing, but someone told us to do the fucking work, and so we are. And it was like, fair play to you.
That's you know, again, there's a bit of respect there for that, like, you know. Again, sort of.
So, God knows when we see them again. I almost feel like there's a hole in what Northern Ireland can provide bands in terms of the Crawling now, because, and the reason to say that is because of the pyro that they had at Bloodstock. As far as I understand, that wasn't hired out. They bought that. They now own that. I almost feel that.
I think it was part of the package, was it not?
I thought they went out and bought it. Maybe I'm wrong. But I almost feel like off the back of the Crawling having this success, and I know it's something that has been tried and failed so many times. I think there is room for a metal festival now in Northern Ireland, something small. So that Claire's just confirmed they did buy the Pyro.
Did they?
Yeah. I think off the back of the crawling success and the sort of shows that they're putting on, specifically at Bloodstock, I'm starting to think there might be room for an outdoor festival. The crawling headlining and a bunch of bands, and I know it's a fucking nightmare to organise and put something like that on, but I just get this feeling that
You volunteering, are you?
if I wasn't buying a house next year, maybe, fucking maybe. But yeah, that was it. That was the crawling and an evening show. Absolute banger.
But I do agree with you in this festival business. You know, I suppose we always have metal bands kind of going to other festivals like Sunflower. You know, Lockhorns have played there, Cursed Sun have played there. Like Oracle possibly played there too. You know, we're okay at like sending bands to like festivals that, you know, I don't want to say, you know, they're not metal festivals. You know, could we have a marquee up in the middle of Ballymena somewhere? That why Ballymena? But you know, could we have a marquee up somewhere that just and manage to get that?
Funny enough, it's just, I mean, someone is attempting to do, I mean, what I consider to be a gigstival, and that's 2 nights in the Nerve Centre. Are you aware of this one?
Yeah, no, I kind of
Frost and Fireland.
Yeah, I followed this a wee bit.
Yeah. I think we'll talk about that in future podcasts, but we'll leave it just for now.
Yeah,
I think it's an interesting one, specifically the expensive fucking ticket. Yeah, so that's the gigs we've been to. It's been a hell of a fucking ride coming back to gigs and being out literally every fucking weekend, and some nights 2 gigs in a row.
Yeah.
What's coming up? What's on the horizon that you're looking forward to?
I suppose, what are we getting in January here? I think we're getting...
There's a gig with Ravenlight, Delusional Silence and the Crux.
Yeah, so I think that's their long postponed album launch, much like, I suppose, you know, Acid Age. They released an album, and, you know, there's that gig. There's also, I think there's... what was the other one? There's a Pure Sonic Outcasts, I think, or again another album launch. Yep. With Haint again, you know. So again, look here. Well, you know, I'm all there for both of those bands. There's a third band on that bill. It's
So Much for the Sun.
So Much for the Sun, and again, like, actually, those guys never got the album launch they needed. I don't believe, because I think they released an album in 2020 that just didn't get. They did have one lined up, didn't get it, and actually it was a really good album too. So, you know, so I'm sure they're itching. Now they, I believe, actually went through a couple of lineup changes. Maybe I don't want to say lineup changes. It's more of an addition. I think they've tried to add a vocalist, but I don't know if they've been successful or not. Not too sure. But I certainly haven't seen anything on social media about it. But yeah, it's. There's good gigs coming, and I know that there are other people out there that are, you know, like that those gigs that we didn't get to play, they're still there.
There's one in McHugh's, I think, in January, which is Cursed Sun, Mortal Backlash, Aborted Earth, and Pure Sonic Outcast.
Yes.
Which under normal circumstances would be a stacked gig to me.
Yeah.
Would be all over that. I don't care for gigs in McHugh's. I just don't.
Kind of.
I'll probably go because it's better to get out and see the bands than sitting at home not seeing bands.
Yeah, that's true.
I just don't have high hopes for gigs in McHugh's. Sorry, the guys putting that gig on. It's just can't get excited for it. Just can't. And then I guess next year there's probably going to be a fuck ton of rescheduled gigs. You would like to think. I have tickets for Gojira,
Clutch,
Clutch,
well.
Iron Maiden, and I can't even remember what else. So there's plenty to look forward to.
I'm at a point where I don't even know what fucking tickets I've bought.
I think everyone's the same.
You know,
and it doesn't help that you don't have physical tickets anymore. It's all digital, so you can't even go to your. I don't know, but you have a little box where I keep my tickets in.
I have a whole drawer. I have a drawer of like hundreds of tickets.
I think that will wrap us up. It was good to get back into the podcast.
Yeah, it was good to be back. Good to be chatting absolute shite.
For the foreseeable future, I think we will be just doing this. We'll be talking about gigs. We'll be talking about bands. Maybe one day down the line we'll start stretching this out and doing interviews and all those sort of things, and not gig reviews, album reviews and that sort of thing. But for now, we'll stick to this, having beers, talking about gigs. Metal to the Masses is coming up. I think you've very limited time if you want to get your band in for that. That's always been our bread and butter, as I've said, so we will be covering all of that each gig. Looking forward to seeing who's in for that. Be interesting.
Yeah, I know James has got a good response. Like
Yeah.
he was saying, he's got a good response. So it's my favourite time of year. It's
My World Cup.
Yeah,
My World Cup.
yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it happens every year, which is fucking great.
Nice.
So
Okay, so thanks very much for watching the podcast. If anyone's managed to get this far through it, yeah. Gotta say the usual fucking YouTube bullshit, like, subscribe, and all that fucking shit. If anyone goes to gigs as often as me as Phil done, you'd be more than welcome to come on the podcast. We'd like to get more voices on, more opinions. Be a great thing. But for now, thanks very much for watching, and as always, keep listening to the wrong kind of music.